A reason to buy jewelry? You don't need one. Gift yourself the modern classic piece you've always had your eye on at BlueNile.com. Blue Nile's collection of high-quality diamond jewelry is ready to complement your every look. Show off your elegant taste with a pair of diamond studs, or serve up brilliant style in a traditional tennis bracelet, shipped right to your door. Reward yourself with a piece you've always wanted at BlueNile.com. That's BlueNile.com.
Welcome to the Sportsman's Voice Roundup, your weekly look at conservation and sporting community news happening across the nation and on the Hill. Thanks for tuning in. This is the TSV Roundup. Welcome, everybody, to this week's edition of the Sportsman's Voice Roundup for the week of March 17th. Happy Patty's Day, St. Patty's Day, 2025. This week's episode brought to you by Bass Pro Shops, Richard Childress Racing, and our friends at Ducks Unlimited. Thank you all. Our lead story this week: right to hunt and fish gets a committee hearing in Maine. That contribution coming by yours truly. We'll get into that here after I go through the headlines. NASS Executive Council President introduces several CSF priorities in Arkansas. CSF priority forest land conservation legislation introduced in the Senate. A mess out west, anti-gun shenanigans return. Louisiana Wildlife and Fisheries Commission moves to modernize muzzleloader definition. And finally, better mapping of marine waters for anglers and boaters clears Senate committee. All of that and much, much more. But let's get into our lead story this week. As mentioned, authored by yours truly. Last week, got an opportunity to head up to Augusta, Maine, state capital of Maine there, and testify in the Inland Fisheries and Wildlife Committee, Joint Committee on that. So Maine being one of a handful of states throughout the country right now that are looking at amending state constitutions off the heels of a very successful campaign via Amendment 2 in Florida in the 2024 election cycle. Seems more people are tuned in, wanting to take that up, take that on, and guarantee those rights for their citizens, and as well they should. And that's something we've championed and working with our partners nationally and in state. But our community definitely has a vested interest in seeing these amendments get presented and then make their way to the ballot. In this case here, should uh, this particular bill. So not only you go up there and speak to this, also submitted our written testimony on it. What's interesting here is opponents of this there are a number of reasons, but specifically to Maine, what's interesting, and I'll get to some of the other reasons here too, is that there was a Maine Supreme Court ruling not too far back where Maine citizens did amend their state constitution for food sovereignty. They have a right to food. And in that language is harvesting your food, so that accounts for hunting. So some folks in state are saying this push for LD 820 and amending the state constitution is unnecessary because that has been adjudicated, and that is for some folks a clear line in the sand that yes, there is a right, a constitutional right in Maine to hunt, but not hunt and fish, not hunt, fish, trap, not hunt fish using traditional methods. So while that Supreme Court ruling is important and certainly gave some backbone to residents insofar as being able to go hunt for harvest. Um, Couple of things it doesn't clear up is the angling access guarantee. I'm not sure why we're not accounting for our anglers in that. And then also use of traditional methods and trapping. These are all equally important and should be expressly outlined as they do in LD 820 here in Maine. Another concern too, I mean, you just think about it. If you look back at the first Trump administration, I mean, you wanna nothing is guaranteed, right? I mean, especially you look at our federal Supreme Court and you had completely unrelated to our sporting community, but you had a landmark decision that was 50 years old, social issue, uh, Roe v. Wade. That's as far as I'm getting into it, but that wasn't even certain. 50 years later, it was overturned. Social issues and stuff aside, that stuff went back to the states. So what I'm saying is, you had a group of people that thought they had this right. This was all certain because the federal Supreme Court decided something 50 years ago, and then fast forward, like I said, that first Trump administration, that was overturned. Current Supreme Court took that up, overturned it. So, my point being, what's to say, that Supreme Court ruling that I'm referencing here in Maine, does not get challenged in the future, right? Does not rub some anti-hunters the wrong way, and they get the funding and the backing, and all of a sudden, yeah, let's challenge that Supreme Court ruling. And what I said in my testimony as well is, hunting, no secret, it's on the decline, the participation. And, if this is one of those things, if people aren't participating, then nothing guarantees it stays around. So, generationally, if right now this current generation is not interested in coming out, I'm playing this out, not saying any of this is of certain, but for argument's sake, the population in Maine, the participation in hunting in Maine decreases so much, and you don't have enough people in the community to defend it. There are always this well-funded side of the anti-hunting, anti-true conservation side of society. They don't really need to pick off the entire 80% that are in the middle, or in this scenario, it's even could be even more because there's less people participating potentially in the future. So, game it all out. There's no constitutional protection, and they make a bunch of legal challenges. They start infiltrating different levels of inland fisheries and wildlife, and then suddenly conservation looks a whole lot different in Maine without hunting as prescribed by the North American model of wildlife conservation as one of the tenets. It is it also was talked about in that same some of the statutes in Maine that hunting has been stated as the preferred method of wildlife management. Again, that's great. Love to see it, but that's not 100% certain. It's not a guarantee. Amending your state constitutions is a huge pain in the neck by design. Get these things passed. It will be another huge pain in the neck to undo what has been done by design. So we're not constantly coming back doing these things over and over and over again, one way or the other. It's important that the residents of Maine have this codified, have this updated in their state constitution for the very reasons I just said. Some other opponents are worried that the Maine Warden Service, the fine professionals there in the Maine Warden Service who do such great work, would be hamstrung and have to go through many challenges as far as being able to do their job and execute their job and their authority because this is a right. The language, the preferred language that we have worked on over years here at CSF is that very same model language that is in this proposed amendment of LD 820 and passes the smell test. This has been done in Florida. It's been done in all the recent updates in the recent states and in the last 2 decades that have gone through this iteration of updating. There's, I think, two that jump out that expressly highlighted trapping. They kind of went away from the language we're using by all traditional methods. They still got it done. I think one of those was Arkansas comes to mind, but nevertheless, in that language, it prescribes for the state agency, law enforcement to be able to continue doing what they do. And if people are breaking laws, to prosecute and punish and penalize people. None of that changes. What does change is the citizenry has a guaranteed right by their constitution, their state constitution, to have hunting, fishing, trapping, and traditional methods of take protected in perpetuity. I can tell you guys have heard me say in the past, I reference my time on the New Hampshire Fish and Game Commission as a commissioner for Stratford County, New Hampshire. Uh, represented at the time like 138,000 people. Within those constituencies, there are agitators that, again, they have pretty deep pockets, or they are funded nationally by deeper pockets, and they come into smaller states, and it's this death by a thousand cuts strategy. Let's just bleed it out and bloodletting. So they will come in and attack houndsmen. They'll attack bear hunters, always attacking trapping, method of take, means of take, all of it. And to devote resources and having these arguments and going to legislatures and trying to, in New Hampshire's case, take away the authority of the commission, different setup in Maine, it's expensive. And this is a strategy. Because of this deep-pocketed strategy that the anti-hunting, true anti-conservation crowd has, they just bankroll, and they just keep coming into small states, smaller constituencies, and just beat these agencies up. This constitution protection prevents a lot of this, and this is wasteful. So wasteful. So wasteful. You could take these resources and be allocating them to other initiatives, other projects, other mission delivery projects for these state agencies instead of screwing around, entertaining these foolhardy preservationists who ultimately, at the end of the day, want all of this to go away. They don't want anyone hunting. They don't want anyone taking from the land. They don't want anyone fishing. They definitely don't want anyone trapping. And again, it bears repeating. I always mention the same low hanging fruit, uh, niche populations within our larger sporting community. Rest assured, as they continue to pick these people off, the niche communities, the bear houndsmen, and again all these little smaller groups, trappers, they are coming for you. The innocuous, I'm doing the air finger quotes because you can't see me. The innocuous archer, whitetail hunter, like, oh, I'm just so vanilla, just out here in my tree, not bothering anybody in the middle of the woods. No, sir or ma'am, no. They're coming for you. They're coming for your traditional archery tackle. They're coming for your compound bones. They're coming for all means and method of take. You're not safe just because killing whitetail deers is socially acceptable. They want it all to die, not the critters. Our heritage, our hunting heritage. That's their goal. That is the end goal, to hermetically seal the wilderness, to take glass bowls and create little biospheres so you can never touch it. People my age and a little older might remember, I think it was, golly days, it was like the late mid 80s out in, I think it was Arizona. It was the biosphere. They literally had, I think people lived in these glass bulbs. It was the craziest thing, but that's what these preservationists want. They take this idea of leave no trace and they take it to the extreme. They don't want you sitting in trees. They don't want you dropping worms on hooks and taking fish and enjoying that. Right to hunt and fish is important for so many reasons, and many of them I've just laid out here in the last 15 minutes. Representative Steve Wood, who sits on our NASC Executive Council, also sits on Joint Committee on Inland Fisheries and Wildlife there in Maine, provided us a quote for the article. So I'll bring you this from Steve, Representative Woods. We're hoping to get it done, LD 820. We're hoping to get it passed. We're hoping to get things worked out in our work group and can move the bill along the legislative process. There's an important distinction in the bill's language that expressly outlines right to hunt and fish using traditional methods versus some of the language opponents have cited that only specifies harvest by way of hunting for food. LDA 20 details hunting, fishing, and the use of traditional methods, guaranteeing all Maine citizens this right while not infringing in any way upon the well-established management authority, the Department of Inland Fisheries and Wildlife, end quote. Yeah, I mean, he sums up everything I've just said here for the last 15 minutes. Will we get this done? I don't know. We're trying like hell to make it happen here. These campaigns, these efforts do take a lot of cooperative effort within our community, and it takes a lot of support and some of the potential infighting and squabbling that for whatever reason occurs within our sporting community. You just got to cut the BS on this and go with a united voice. Everybody, your trad hunters, your compound bow hunters, your rifle hunters, all the little special interests need to be set aside because they all have this one interest, and that is guaranteeing the right to hunt and fish and trap and using traditional methods. That is the focus, and that's what the sporting community, the citizens of Maine, need to focus on. Have the other conversations for another time. What's interesting in Maine too that I hadn't covered, but previous arguments against this, and this was kind of fleshed out in committee and dispelled, but Maine Maine remains one of 2 states in the entire country that has a complete outright prohibition on Sunday hunting. Now, this isn't gonna be a Sunday hunting tangent. I'm just gonna tell you that's where their minds go. Anything that comes up with this in Maine, in Massachusetts, Massachusetts, Maine, you're compared to Massachusetts on this. Massachusetts track record straight up sucks right now on a lot of this, on guns, on access, conservation, and Sunday hunting. So you're in the same vein, Maine, right now, with your Sunday hunting position. But again, they said I wouldn't do it, so I'm not. But part of that opposition came in. Well, if we have this guarantee to right hunt and fish and use traditional methods, outgo Sunday hunting. And even in their own sporting community, there are people, there are sportsmen that are against Sunday hunting. It's crazy to me. I don't, again, try not to go down the tangent. What I will say, one, Sunday hunting is the most discriminatory practice put on the sporting community. Massachusetts and Maine expressly discriminate. Say it again, discriminate against the hunting community. You can go hunt, you can go fish on Sundays in both states. You go walk, you can go enjoy the woods. Hell, I can go into the north woods of Maine and set a target range up. I can shoot all damn day. I can shoot 10,000 rounds if I wanted to on my own land if I had it. And that's totally chill. But if I go sit in a tree stand for a whitetail or, whatever, I want to do some small game partridge hunting and maybe at best shoot a half a dozen shots on partridge and maybe 1 or 2 shots on a white-tailed deer. Somehow that is problematic, but I digress. Right to hunt and fish and use of traditional methods, again, does not take away the authority of inland fisheries and wildlife in Maine, therefore would not remove the silly prohibition on Sunday hunting because they are the final arbiters of that, and they're the ones that make that rule. So that's not even in the argument and the consideration. So if you're listening to Maine and you think that's part of this, it's not. The Sunday hunting thing, just take it out of your mind right now. It's got nothing to do with it because of the preferred language that is included in LDA 20, that the ability to set those seasons and how and when people hunt in Maine remains with IF&W. So that's it. So take the Sunday hunting thing and put it on a shelf, and we'll have that discussion argument another day, and we can devote more time to it. That's what's going on in Maine. That's the lead story. And again, this is happening in other states across the country. I think West Virginia, we reported on. I think it was Iowa last week in the roundup. So, and there, again, I think there's a couple others. So Maine's not the only one. Would love to see Maine become the 25th state, riding that wave of momentum from November 2024. and the good work that was accomplished in Florida, but it's got to be done in a united voice. And the sporting community really, really needs to get together on this and make sure we're speaking in one voice. And you do that by working the legislative process, get it to the ballot, and then we can have our say in November. You can have your say in November. I don't. I'm an out of state hunter, but if I was a resident, I'd be right there as a resident. So that's the lead. Let us now get into the rest of the news from around the nation. If you've hung around this long, before I do that, I must ask, short of begging. I don't want to beg. I'm kidding. I'm not begging. When I'm asking guys, or at this point right now, before we get to the rest of the headlines, go now. You can do this while you're listening. Hit subscribe, hit follow. If you're listening on iTunes, open the podcast app, go to the scroll to the bottom. You're going to see 5 stars. Please hit them 5 stars. Takes none of your time. You won't even remember you did it, but it helps us. And again, I thank you, those who've been around from so long, and our new listeners too. Our growth in the last month and a half has been tremendous. Tremendous. That's because you guys are taking action and doing those things. So you new folks come along, or even if for whatever reason, if you haven't done it, take this opportunity right now, as I'm reminding you. If you're on Spotify, subscribe or follow, whatever it is. If you're on iHeart, hit subscribe or follow. iTunes, Apple there, hit those 5 stars and hit subscribe. New shows show up in your phone feed, right there on your home screen every time we launch, so you won't miss an episode. But more importantly, guys, we're playing the numbers, ones and zeros game here, playing these algorithms wherever the the they the algorithms live in the another part of the universe. They control how this show gets out there and gets discovered. Your participation in that by way of your likes, your subscribes, your follows, and your stars, and if you feel so inclined, positive reviews. More people interact with this, more other people are going to see it, and getting important stories out like Sunday hunting and fishing rights, that and right to hunt and fish rights, and the lead story are important stories to be telling, especially when we have half the country that does not have that. We want to get this out. We want to work with the sporting community. Your participation helps perpetuate this show. So right now, subscribe, follow, hit those stars. We thank you so much. Rest of the headlines. Let's go. Heading down to Arkansas, this from Kent Keene. NASC Executive Council President introduces several CSF priorities in Arkansas. Through the sporting conservation community, we often find ourselves in a defensive position. However, there are opportunities to advance proactive measures to protect and advance outdoor pursuits. In Arkansas, these opportunities have recently taken shape in the form of a resolution to celebrate the 75th anniversary of the Dingle Johnson and bills that would reimburse state fish and wildlife agencies or the agency for future license discount and grant resident license pricing to exchange students attending school in the natural state. NAS Executive Council President and Arkansas Legislative Sportsmen's Caucus Co-Chair Representative Jeff Wardlaw has been hard at work introducing legislation that I just mentioned to advance sportsmen priorities in the natural state. Last month, Representative Wardlaw introduced House Resolution 1045, which celebrates the 75th anniversary of the Sport Fish Restoration Program, better known as Dingle Johnson Act. This resolution is designed to commemorate the achievement of the Dingle Johnson Act's passage by Congress in 1950, as well as the investments in fisheries conservation efforts that have resulted from its adoption. H.R. 1045 was passed out of committee in the Arkansas House of Representatives and awaits further action on the House floor. Earlier this month, Representative Wardlaw followed up with House Bills 1631 and 1632. 1631 would allow foreign exchange students attending school in Arkansas to apply for hunting and fishing licenses at the same rates paid by Arkansas residents. This incredible recruitment tool builds on existing allowances for non-resident full-time college students to hunt and fish at resident license rates. House Bill 1632 would reimburse the Arkansas Game and Fish Commission by any revenue lost as a result from new hunting or fishing license discounts created by the Arkansas legislature. In recent years, legislators across the country have sought opportunities to reward deserving groups with free or discounted licenses. 1632 would allow that to take place in Arkansas without worrying about the unintended consequences for conservation funding that would result from lost license revenue. In support of HB 1632, CSF shared a letter of support with members of the Arkansas Legislative Sportsmen's Caucus. HB 1631 and 1632 both await further action in the House State Agencies and Government Affairs Committee. Good stuff to report there. Thank you, Ken, for your reporting. This from John Colclaser, our Senior Director of Forest Policy. CSI priority forest lands conservation legislation introduced in the Senate. Private working forests provide a wide range of benefits to the public, including providing habitat for fish and wildlife, open space, and access for sportsmen and women, and more. And the Forest Conservation Easement Program would offer landowners additional options to conserve their forested land. Preventing the conversion of working forests to other land use is critical to conserving wildlife, supporting the forest industry, and passing on our outdoor traditions to the next generation. Creating the Forest Conservation Easement Program is a top priority for the sportsman's community, forest industry, and other conservation organizations. The legislation fills a gap in federal conservation programs for forests by allowing state and local governments, tribal agencies, and land trusts to purchase and hold conservation easements from landowners. Voluntary conservation agreements are proven tools for land conservation that are tailored to meet the goals of the landowner to conserve their land, including actively managing their forests in perpetuity or for a term of years. On March 13th, Congressional Sportsmen's Caucus members Senator Kristen Gillibrand and Senator Roger Wicker introduced the Forest Conservation Easement Program Act of 2025, otherwise known as S 1050. The Congressional Sportsmen's Foundation supports this legislation alongside a broad coalition of other conservation organizations. In the 118th Congress, the FCEP Act of 2023, that was House 2631 and House Resolution 3424, has strong bipartisan support, and CSC member and chairman of the House Agricultural Committee, Representative G.T. Thompson, included FCEP in the Farm Bill. Specifically, Forest Conservation Easement Program would expand on Healthy Forest Reserve Program, renaming it the Forest Conservation Easement Program in the Farm Bill's conservation title. FCEP offers two options for forest land conservation: forest land easements, which are modeled after the agricultural land easements under the Agricultural Conservation Easement Program, and forest reserve easements, which are modeled after and are successor to HFRP. Administrated by the U.S. Department of Agriculture's Natural Resource Conservation Services, land trusts and state, local, and tribal agencies are eligible to purchase and hold conservation easement on working forests. Forest reserve easements are purchased directly from landowners, and NRCS will hold the easements. CSF is thankful for the leadership of Senators Gillibrand and Wicker on this pressing issue for conservation community. FCEP is critical to keep working forests as forests and thereby provide habitat for fish and wildlife, access for hunters and anglers. CSF looks forward to contributing or to continuing to support FCEP Act with the goal of including it in the Farm Bill. You can tune in tomorrow for our feature presentation. Q1 federal policy update. You can hear more about that from John Colclaser. Always fun when I see Barry Snell's name on an article. Let's go to it. A Mess Out West. Anti-gun shenanigans return. This co-authored by one Barry Snell and Marie Newmiller. Legislation seeking to restrict firearms is often eventually used as a vector of attack for issues more directly pertaining to sportsmen and women, just as restrictions on hunting are often used as a vector of attack against Second Amendment rights. Our issues are fundamentally intertwined, given that firearms of every kind are routinely used in hunting, and many sportsmen are also avid recreational shooters. Therefore, it's important to be aware these issues as they arise and have a full understanding of what may likely happen in the future and how they impact our sporting community. Even if Second Amendment issues are not your primary interest, this is an important point. And we often get asked this. Obviously, we have partners, all sorts of different partners in this arena to that extent. Folks like NSSF, NRA, groups like that. A lot of the civil issues that come up, Second Amendment issues that come up, are important to CSF, are important to us, even if there's not a direct tie in to conservation. But as Barry and Murray are going to point out here, we're just bringing this up because sometimes there's just so many things that we we have to be very specific in what CSF is engaging on at the state level because there's so many attacks. So as we look through the laundry list of these Second Amendment attacks, we are prioritizing internally ourselves the stuff that is directly affecting conservation and then working in tandem with our other partners on some of the other stuff. So, with that qualifier, the rest of the article. Colorado legislators have once again tried a ban so-called assault weapons by going after commonly owned semi-automatic rifles, but that bill has met with significant resistance that has resulted in heavy modification, plus one recent amendment which endangers funding to Colorado Parks and Wildlife. Legislators in New Mexico are pushing a wish list bill packed with anti-sportsman provisions, including a semi-auto ban and a gun registry. Oregon's House and Senate Judiciary Committees shut out pro-gun voices in a joint hearing allegedly about gun tragedy prevention, choosing instead to pack the meeting with representatives of anti-gun groups. Seems perfectly normal. It's not. Anti-gun legislation that geez, I'm pro. Try it again, Cody. Coming back in 5. Anti-gun legislation that prohibits certain firearms and accessories has a chilling effect on recreational shooting, and this is especially threatening the American system of conservation funding, as 80% of the Pittman-Robinson revenue can be attributed to the recreational shooting sports community rather than hunters. Uh, Even if you do not own one of the types of firearms affected by these bills, the reduction in sales of them nonetheless diminishes wildlife conservation funding. Here are the bills by state. So, Colorado, as reported on previously, Senate Bill 25003 advanced to the House following significant amendments. SB 3 started out in the Senate as a virtual total ban on semi automatic firearms that accept detachable magazines. However, as stated before, intense pressure from groups like CSF, NRA, NSSF, and the public, Colorado senators saw fit to amend the bill down to no longer ban anything, but instead require owners of those firearms to pass either a hunter safety course and a new firearm safety course to be managed by Colorado Parks and Wildlife, or take a yet unidentified or undefined 12-hour firearm safety course. This version went to the House, where the House Judiciary Committee recently added Amendment 52. Amendment 52, if passed, would divert wildlife funds towards paying for Colorado Parks and Wildlife to conduct this new firearms class. This diversion of funds puts millions of dollars of Pittman Robinson funding at risk, as sportsmen dollars may not be used for anything except wildlife conservation, hunting access, hunter ed programs, land acquisition, shooting range construction, and other state fish and wildlife agency purposes. Violations of this prohibition risks the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service cutting millions of dollars of annual funding the Colorado Parks and Wildlife, which they can ill afford. Funny thing about that Second Amendment, it says nothing in there about having to take a class. Colorado would do well to key in on that. Let's go to New Mexico for more good news. Senate Bill 279 is essentially a wish list of anti-gun, as a wish list for the anti-gun community. If passed, it would ban semi-automatic rifles, standard capacity magazines, so-called rapid-fire trigger devices, actual automatic firearms, and if that wasn't enough, it would top it off by creating a gun registry. Hard pass and stop right there. But wait, there's more because it's Barry. Worse still, it would be up to the New Mexico Attorney General to decide which firearms to be added to the prohibited list, making this list arbitrary and unpredictable. The fate of Senate Bill 279 is uncertain at this point. The chair of the Senate Finance Committee, which presently has the bill, does not seem to be in a big hurry to move it, with just days left in the session. However, if passed, the potential decrease in contributions to Pittman Robinson could be harmful. Uh, that, and then also this whole idea of actual gun registry. No, absolutely not. No, no, and no. Say it one more time. New Mexico. No. Oregon. A joint informational hearing has been scheduled by in Oregon by members of the House and Senate Judiciary Committees. Slated as an informational meeting on gun tragedy prevention, the agenda consisting of invitation only speakers is weighted heavily towards gun control organization with no sporting conservation or recreational shooting representatives in the meeting because, transparency and fairness and all. This meeting is occurring as legislators from both chambers are set to begin work on pre-filed gun control legislation for the 2025 session. While legislators will not accept public testimony during this information meeting, Professional Sportsmen's Foundation is closely working with members of the Oregon Legislative Sportsmen's Caucus and in-state partners to share educational information about the value of shooting sports, gun safety, American system conservation funding. We will be tracking legislation closely and working to ensure that firearms legislation does not harm the ASCF or recreational opportunities. As always, CSF will continue to work with legislators and our in state partners to oppose these and numerous similar bills across the region. The hits keep coming out west, man. That's not saying it's not happening elsewhere. There's some other egregious bills, but for the purposes here, we thank both Barry and Marie for their contributions. Let's have some good news. Let's go to the southeast here. Louisiana Wildlife and Fisheries Commission moves to modernize muzzleloader definition. This from Mark Lance. Advancements in muzzleloading technologies, such as the fire stick, have enhanced the safety and reliability of traditional muzzleloading firearms while maintaining the traditional characteristics of loading projectiles down the barrel. However, many states have outdated definitions of muzzleloaders or primitive firearms that don't allow for the use of such technologies during their primitive weapons seasons, which limits access. On March 4th, CSF submitted comments to the Louisiana Wildlife Fisheries Commission, urging them to amend what constitutes a legal firearm during primitive firearm seasons in the proposed hunting regulations for the 2025-2027 seasons. On March 6th, the commission unanimously motioned to amend the rules to match the suggestions put forth by CSF. The proposed change would be open to public comment through the end of April, and the commission will take their final vote during the May 2025 meeting. Louisiana Department of Wildlife and Fisheries will conduct a public hearing on all amendments to the hunting regulations April 22nd at 10 a.m. at the Louisiana Department of Wildlife Fisheries headquarters in Baton Rouge. The changes that CSF proposed to the commission pertain to general and wildlife management area, hunting rules, legal firearms, primitive firearm season. Specifically, they were as follows: um, rifles or pistols, 44 cal minimum, or shotguns, 10 gauge or smaller, all of which are designated to have projectiles, ball, shot, or bullet, including saboted bullets loaded exclusively through the muzzle or the muzzle end of a cylinder chamber, and is fired by wheel lock, flintlock, percussion cap, or center fire primer, and may be fitted with magnified scopes. That does take out, the proposed does take out, must load exclusively from the muzzle, use black powder or approved substitute only, take ball, shot, or bullet projectile only, including saboted bullets. This is where it's really key to have the text in front of you here if you're not picking up what I'm laying out for you. You can go to congressionalsportsman.org, see the articles, check out the in article links to do more research and see how the quoted language here that Mark has put forth is actually laid out. With these suggested changes and upon final approval by the commission, Louisiana would join 26 other states, including other southern states such as Arkansas, Florida, Georgia, and Tennessee, that have recently recognized the advancements in muzzleloading technology. In addition to expanding opportunities during the primitive firearm seasons, allowing for the use of this new technology helps eliminate inconsistencies presently authorized muzzleloaders, such as user-caused variances in powder loads, while also improving safety by eliminating the chance the user inadvertently double charging the propellant. CSF applauds the commission for taking this step and looks forward to continuing push the needle on this initiative. Great reporting by Mark. Appreciate it. If you want to learn more about that technology we're talking about there and updating, you can go back to a couple of feature presentations of this podcast. Check out our interview with Traditions, interview the Halls at SHOT Show 2025. Great breakdown, understanding what we're trying to do and what that really the benefits of this technology. Also, you go back, check out conversation with Thompson Center Arms, Greg Ritz, cover some of this as well. And kind of all things puzzle. Wrapping it up here. Better mapping of marine waters for anglers and boaters clears the Senate committee. There are 7 federal agencies under 4 different cabinet level secretaries that have some degree of jurisdiction and regulatory authority over what hunters, anglers, and boaters can and cannot do on navigable waters. As a complement to the Map Waters Act, H.R. 187, for the Department of the Interior and the Department of Agriculture that recently cleared the U.S. House of Representatives, the Map Oceans Act recently passed out of the Senate Committee on Commerce, Science, and Transportation that requires the federal agency with the largest area of U.S. waters under their jurisdiction, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, NOAA, to digitize and map public information about federal fishing and boating restrictions in marine waters. This bill is one of many priority pieces of legislation for CSF in the 119th. Just like John's article tomorrow, tune in. Hear Chris Horton, um, our senior director of fisheries policy, get into this more. But the rest of the article here. NOAA has jurisdictional authority over our nation's marine fisheries resources from the limit of state to territorial sea, 3 or 9 miles from shore, depending on the state, out to the 200-mile limit of exclusive economic zone. A lot of water, a lot of rules. In addition to the 1.24 million square miles of water in marine protected areas (MPAs), mostly under their authority, NOAA also manages 460 fish stocks or complexes through the 8 regional fishery management councils. Last week, the MAP Oceans Act cleared the Senate Committee on Commerce, Science, and Transportation on a unanimous voice vote. Introduced by Senator Ted Cruz out of Texas and Congressional Sportsmen Caucus Senate Vice Chair Senator Angus King in Maine, the bill seeks to make accessing federal waters easier by eliminating any confusion for public recreation on our nation's marine and coastal waterways through standardizing, consolidating, and publishing digital data concerning regulations on marine waters under federal management. This from Chris Horton. Access for anglers isn't just about where you can launch your boat. With our complicated system of federal fisheries management and with our network of marine protected areas, it can be especially challenging to know which waters are open for fishing and what type of gear you can use. We very much appreciate Senator Cruz and Senator King's for their leadership in removing barriers and uncertainty for America's saltwater anglers. End quote. MAP Oceans Act will direct NOAA to digitize and make available to the public any access or recreational use restriction on marine waters under the agency's jurisdiction. Marine protected areas cover 26% of U.S. marine waters, most of which are under NOAA's watch. In addition, through NOAA's 8 regional fishery management councils, 46 management plans covering 460 fish stocks or stock complexes create a mosaic of fishing regulations and restrictions that are often location specific and can be cumbersome to understand. MAP Oceans Act will ultimately benefit anglers and boaters by helping them know which waters are open or closed to boating or fishing, if these are seasonal closures for certain species of fish in specific locations, and what types of fishing gear is allowed in any of the given areas, among others. CSF will continue to work with the bill sponsors of both MAP Oceans and MAP Waters to see these two important bills cross the finish line in the 119th. It's enough just to read that article with all the acronyms and all the people in charge and everybody with their hands in all these cookie jars. Never mind understanding the complex mosaic, as Chris put it, cumbersomeness of all these rules and regulations. And holy smoke. So, all of that subtle opining to say these are two good acts that are going to dramatically increase efficiencies insofar as understanding where you're standing, what you can and can't do. And that's, really all anyone can ask for. And the fact that they're doing it and doing so in a great bipartisan way and effort shows once again that our community can lead the way on such efforts, and common sense can, you know, rear its head every now and again and let's get some things done. This is great. And we don't want anyone getting jammed up out on any of these waterways or anything. So, clearing up any confusion or cumbersomeness of understanding, where you're at. It's a lot of information. That's a ton of information. The casual recreational angler just going out, just wanting to do a little fishing to try something out, gets gobsmacked with all of this. They just put their gear down and walk back to shore. Forget it. I'll go somewhere else and do something else. This can help alleviate some of those stressors and certainly make it more accessible and easier to understand what we have at hand here. So again, like I said, feature presentation tomorrow, guys. You're going to hear from John Cole Calaser on forestry, Chris Horton here on fisheries policy, and Taylor Schmitz gives us an update on the other policy, federal policy on the Hill. Tune in for that. This was a really long one, and I really thank you guys for those who made it near an hour here. These are normally 30-minute updates, but we've got just so much stuff going on, so much good potential happening across the country with legislation moving through state houses, and then also egregious stuff you heard from that entire report from the West from Barry and Marie. So this is important to get out. If you can't do the whole hour, take it in chunks. Take us with you. You're heading to the grocery store, take us for 10 minutes. If you're going to the gym, put us on the treadmill, although I don't know that this is really going to fire you up to log those miles, but hey, maybe. Quick way to kill an hour anyway. So as always, thank you guys for hanging with us, for consuming the information and doing stuff with it, for putting it on your social feeds, for making people aware, becoming more aware yourself, being an active participant in the legislative process. And as I always say, more stuff is getting done in our backyards that affects us directly than stuff happening in the nation's capital. Not that that stuff is not important, because it is very important, but the stuff that's really driving how you enjoy the outdoors, how you and your family enjoy it, is happening in your state capital. So the fact that you tune in here on Wednesday, take the information, digest it, and try to do more homework on it is vitally important. And again, I go back to going to congressionalsportsman.org, signing up for the free newsletter every Monday or Tuesday if there's a holiday, as well as the tracking the capitals. It's all free, and it's all information for you to be a more well-informed, conservation-minded sportsman or woman to go out there and make a difference and get people activated in your community. We thank you for that. I've taken up about an hour of your time, so thank you. Appreciate it as always. Again, feature podcast tomorrow. Look forward to that, hearing from our federal policy leads. And it's almost spring. Some people are already turkey hunting, and I'm extremely jealous. I'm jealous. I was texting with a good friend of mine this morning. We both agree that we're getting older every year, and we think we have more maturity and patience. And about this time on the calendar, mid-March, especially being in the north, where I've got another month and a half, maybe a month and 2 weeks, month and a week. I'm watching everybody from Florida and the Gulf states starting to get after turkeys and posting on their social feeds. And congratulations to you folks that are out there doing it. But I want to play too. And so we both agreed that we're kind of like petulant children stomping our feet, although doing it quietly and in private. But we want a turkey hunt. So that's a thing that's happening, and spring is happening. It's nice to see the longer days here, and buds starting to be pronounced, and turkeys gobbling for sure in the south, and that line of wonderful turkey centric things is moving north. So plenty to look forward to. That's it, guys. I appreciate it as always, and that's it. We'll just leave it there. As always, CSF is your inside connection to outdoor legislation. Until next Wednesday, y'all be good. We'll see you. Thanks. Thanks for joining us on this edition of the Sportsman's Voice podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, your support is crucial, and you can help us out right now by leaving a review, filling in those 5 stars where available, sharing this episode with friends and family, and engaging with us socially. CSF can be found on Facebook, Instagram, and X, formerly known as Twitter. Together, we can protect the outdoor sports we love and continue to keep you informed wherever you are. That's it for this week. Until next time, we'll see you later.